The final piece of information that I want to give you to help you decide if this course is right for you is to give you a brief overview, very high-level overview of what this course is about. In order to motivate the material that we will study in this course, consider the following thought experiment. You are a member of the Starship Enterprise, much like Captain Kirk in Star Trek, and you travel through space, you reach a new planet, and you are given the opportunity to start a complete new civilization there, a complete new world from scratch. And not only that, you are given absolute power. You can get to decide exactly how this new world looks like, from top to bottom. The dream of a dictator come true, if you wish. Now, among the many things that you will have to decide to construct such a world, you're going to have to answer what we call the three fundamental economic questions. These questions are what, how, or for whom. And let me explain what they mean. You're going to have to decide what kinds of goods and services is this society going to produce. For example, are you going to allow some types of music to be produced or some types of films? Are you going to allow cars that use fossil fuels, etc., etc., etc.? Exactly what are the goods and services that will be produced? The second question that you're going to have to decide is how are these things going to be produced? For example, are you going to produce energy using nuclear technology, or are you only going to allow solar panels? Who exactly is going to do each job to produce these things? Is this particular person going to be an engineer? It's going to be a cashier. It's going to be a politician, etc., etc., etc. And the final thing that you will have to decide is for whom. Of all the lists of things, goods and services that get produced, who exactly gets to consume everything? Who gets the nicest car? Who gets the worst car? Who gets no car at all? Who gets to read the best books first? Etc., etc., etc. I hope that you are getting a feeling that even the indefeatable Captain Kirk would become extremely overwhelmed by trying to solve the three basic economic questions. It's a very hard problem. Imagine in a world of several billion people like our planet, trying to design and solve these questions for every one of the billions and billions of decisions that have to be made. And yet, if you were Captain Kirk and you were given that mission, you have to find a way of answering the three fundamental economic questions. There is no way around it. Every social group, every human society that has ever existed has had to address them. Now, there is a wide range of potential institutions that Captain Kirk could set up to try to solve the three fundamental questions, and in fact that human societies has used throughout time to solve these problems. And you can, for convenience, line them up in a continuum that go from one extreme of what we call pure command and control to another extreme that we're going to call pure laissez-faire or pure free trade. Okay, pure free trade. And let me explain what these continuums or those extremes mean. Now, in pure command and control here, there is basically a small group that decides everything. So it could be a dictator, it could be a government that is elected or not, but the key thing is not the free decisions of many people that determine what the solution to the questions are. There is a small group that somehow sits there and decides what will be produced, how it will be produced, and for whom it will be produced. At the other extreme is pure laissez-faire or free trade, in which there is no single group that gets to tell others what, how, and for whom to produce. Instead, is the individual free actions and the trades and the agreements that people reach that determine the outcome of the three economic questions. Now, throughout history, there has been a lot of institutions lying at very different points in this line that have been tried. And let me give you a few examples. Old Mother Russia, communist Russia, was an example of institution or a country that was not exactly at the corner, that is almost impossible to achieve, but was pretty close to that. And for example, Russia used to have this thing called 5-year plans, in which there was a central government office that would sit down and try to really plan what should the government and the country produce for the next 5 years. Now, there is also not a single economy that has existed in the world, as far as I know, that has been a pure laissez-faire. But the United States, comes fairly decent to be in that extreme, especially if you do cross-international comparisons. And it's an economy in which the government regulates and restricts some forms of trade, imposes some taxes, etc. But most of the three fundamental economic questions are addressed through the market, through the trading of individuals. Now, almost all modern economies lie in some part of the continuum here and rely very heavily on free trade, but they come in different flavors. Like, for example, France is an economy that relies heavily on free trade. It's a market economy, but in which the government plays a much, much higher role in solving the three economic questions and the allocations of resources in restricting trade than it does in the United States. Now, as I just mentioned, free markets and trading have become an essential part of how resources get allocated in most modern countries and economies. So basic economics is motivated by understanding the performance and the outcomes generated by those markets. And just to give you a feeling for how pervasive these markets are, I just wanted to show you some pictures of markets across the world. This first picture is of a market in Afghanistan, a country that is and has been for the last few decades really ravaged by war and government problems, and yet there you have it. People trading in markets trying to solve the three fundamental economic questions. So another beautiful picture is of what is called a floating market for agricultural products and like vegetables and fruits in Thailand. Here is a picture of what most people would consider the quintessential market. This is a picture of the New York stock market, and this very organized, computerized, extremely efficient way in which the world trades stocks through this institution. And even over the last decade or so, the advent of the web and very sophisticated programming technologies have allowed the creation of markets like, for example, eBay, in which people can trade all sorts of things. So a lot of the economics that we're going to study is about understanding how well do these markets perform and what kinds of outcomes they generate. Our study of markets is going to be divided into 9 units and 3 parts. Let me give you a high overview of what this will look like. For the first 4 weeks, we're going to spend a lot of time developing models and a deep understanding of markets in which there is perfect competition. These are markets in which the consumers there are a lot of firms and are considered the canonical cases of markets. The bottom line from this is that we're going to see that under a certain set of assumptions, markets perform very well and provide very desirable answers to the 3 fundamental questions: what, where, or for whom gets produced. The rest of the course is going to be devoted to studying what is the role of government intervention in competitive markets. For example, what happens when the government introduces taxes? What happens when the government introduces some forms of regulations? Is it desirable or not, and under what conditions? The final part of the course is going to be devoted to a very important topic. Markets perform very well under ideal circumstances, which is what we study in the first unit of the course. But sometimes they do not. Sometimes some of the characteristics of the economy create situations of either imperfect competition, in which, for example, there are a very small number of firms, of markets with externalities, in which the actions of one individual, for example, driving your car and emitting a lot of pollution, directly affects others. It turns out that markets by themselves sometimes don't perform very well in those cases, and that government intervention can help them perform better. So we're going to develop in these last 3 units the theory of those markets. In the process of developing the models and the theory necessary to answer all of the questions that we just described, we're also going to develop a tool set, a set of models and skills that we're going to apply to a large number of questions that I think are of interest. And I just wanted to give you here a sample of some of the applications that we're going to do that I think you may find interesting. Question: is legalizing drugs a good idea? Should the government tax drugs do nothing and just let people trade? Should they make them illegal? What are the consequences of the different regimes? Here's another example. If you travel in an airplane, it's very likely that the person sitting next to you in the plane is not paying the same amount for the airfare that you did, because airlines engage in what is called price discrimination. They really try to maximize the amount of money that they get out of every customer. Is that a good or a bad idea? Should the government forbid it? Let me give you another example. What should be the optimal gasoline tax? Should it be zero, or should it be several dollars like it's in some European countries? Final example. Every year, companies like Apple introduce new technologies constantly. What is the value to society of such products, for example, like the iPhone? Now, the tools that we're going to develop in this course are going to allow you to, I hope, gain a quantum leap of understanding in your ability of how to answer questions such as this one.